Gage just disappeared. He's just out.
Just disappeared.
Hi, Gage.
Hello.
All right. Well, welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network. I'm your host, as always, Mundungus Creevy, alongside Cameron Parker, Gage Madrid, and Glenn Hauser. And this is not an April Fool's Day joke. It is actually a live show. You can tell by the different clothes that we have on if you pay that much attention. Dear Lord, I hope you don't. But how is everybody doing?
Dude, I just realized I have bags under my eyes, and I don't have any idea why.
I don't know. That usually would tell you.
42 years old with 6 kids.
It could just mean that you need sleep.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten sleep. Just literally, it looks like I put on like.
That's why he ran out of the room. He ran out to wake up.
The scan of the the face into the camera.
Have you seen those TikTok videos of that guy that like wakes up at 4:45 in the morning and then like smashes his face in a bowl of ice?
Action Hall or whatever.
And then, like rubs banana on. That's what Gage did. He opened the door, slammed his face in some ice water, and came back in.
He dove into a pool, and it took him 4 minutes to dive into a pool.
Except instead of going to bed at 4:40 or getting up at 4:45, that's when I go to bed. Is 4:45.
Wow. No. Yeah. So the big news obviously happened a few hours ago, maybe a little more than a few hours ago. Michael Malone and Calvin Booth, the head coach and general manager of the Nuggets, got fired, 3 games before the playoffs?
3 games.
I mean, you could kind of see the Booth one coming. Like, nobody was happy with Calvin Booth. I think that the Russell Westbrook signing didn't really work out. You got MPJ and Murray that aren't really playing up to the contracts. So I mean, you could see it coming. But the Michael Malone one's a little shocking until you read all the stuff going into it and how the locker room was just torn apart.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where. I think if you're really like peeling it down in terms of the full-on conversation, it really is just like, why is this happening now with like 3 games, remaining? It's almost like, firing someone on like Thanksgiving or Christmas or something, like just like why? Like why? Like, but I just think that me and Glenn were having this conversation beforehand, and it's like you kind of have to peel it back. And it wasn't the fact that the Denver Nuggets were a bad team under Michael Malone. Like they were a good team under Malone. Like he brought them a championship. He brought them their first championship, and that is something that should always be celebrated. The problem is that the post-championship time, they didn't exactly get better. I mean, like they basically remained status quo for who they were post-championship. They didn't get better while other teams got better, and that's a problem. When you are a championship team, you want to make sure that you are getting better year after year after year, and in essence, building around the greatest player in the world, Nikola Jokic. They didn't exactly do that. They are basically doing the homegrown talent still, that's all fun and dandy, but it's just like you have to basically lift the floor and ceiling of your entire basketball team or team, and they didn't exactly do that. I think the greatest example really is the Golden State Warriors. Like the Golden State Warriors were a homegrown team, and then they realized, oh, you know what? We have this homegrown talent. It's time for us to build some of this with some of these stars around Curry and others and Klay Thompson, and basically build this into a bit of a juggernaut and dynasty and winning championships. And the Nuggets, I hope, are realizing that at this point. It's just, you hope it's not a matter of, too late.
Yeah. And, you hear that that Malone and Booth have been on the outs for the last year, basically. And Josh Kroenke, in his interview with Vic Lombardi, said that this was a move that they were going to make at the, after the season ended. But I think really they're just wanting to see how Adelman will do. It's one of those things where, what's the harm in doing it at this point? It's just very shocking. I mean, Memphis bounces their coach last week, and now the Nuggets do them one better with 3 games before the playoffs. It is a surprising move. It's not really more so in terms of the timing and not in terms of what actually happened, I think, for me.
Yep, and you have to be concerned at this point. Are the Denver Nuggets entering their Milwaukee Bucks era where they move on from their coach and they're just kind of directionless after that? The Bucks hired Frank Vogel. That didn't work out. They fired him as well midseason because he lost the locker room. And they bring in Doc Rivers, and things over there in Milwaukee have just kind of been a disaster ever since then, even after they bring in a superstar in Damian Lillard. So you worry about that if you're the Denver Nuggets. With Calvin Booth, he had to go. Mm-hmm. The roster mismanagement in Denver has just been absolutely ridiculous. I'm somebody who's more acquainted with football than I am with basketball, but in any sport, you want to bolster your roster through free agency. You want to spend money, especially when you have the greatest player in your sport. You want to spend that money. And the Nuggets just have not made these moves, and they've made some poor investments in homegrown guys like Michael Porter Jr. And I also believe that you should have homegrown guys on your roster, but bolster it through free agency, and that's what the Nuggets have failed to do. They brought in guys like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown for their championship run, and after losing these players, they never adequately replaced them. So that's the biggest reason why I feel like Calvin Booth is out. But with Malone, again, like everybody else, I was a little bit surprised by this until seeing the reports that him and Booth were like not communicating whatsoever. They talked bad about each other behind each other's back. There was just kind of a toxic culture brewing behind the scenes there. You could see Nikola Jokic frustrated on the bench the other day against the Warriors. He was kind of having a very demonstrative conversation. So, you know one thing. If you fire your head coach and your GM, you're going to run that by the best player in the sport who's on your roster. So it tells me that Jokic probably signed off on this.
Yeah, and there was a report today that did come out and say that Jokic didn't sign off on it, but like we've seen it far too often. And it's not just in the NBA. Like there was some rumblings even when, Peyton Manning and John Fox were together. Like there were some rumblings in that season when Fox was let go. Like Manning went up to the front office with Elway and basically gave an ultimatum that said it's either Fox or me, meaning who goes and who stays. And
that's not a hard decision.
And that was not a hard decision at all.
Easiest question of the day, yeah.
And they ended up, bringing in, Gary Kubiak, right? And and kind of the rest was history at that point. But I just think that when you look at it from the standpoint of where things were going, and maybe it's a weird comparison because Malone won a championship, but maybe this is the Mark Jackson type of situation that people have been asking about when Malone was here, because that was one of the comparisons of Malone was like, oh, maybe he's like the Mark Jackson of the Warriors, where here comes in Steve Kerr to really like bring in and usher in this era of championship basketball that the Denver Nuggets have been really wanting, and consistent championship basketball. So it's a hard comparison because Malone already brought in a championship, and Mark Jackson basically took them to like the same record that the Nuggets have now. But I just think that it's one where they have to make some really hard decisions. And I know that, that was another conversation we had, before going live, but they have to make some really hard conversations. And that is, do they move on from guys like MPJ? Do they move on from guys like Jamal Murray, who they gave those big contracts for? And do they, in moving on from these players, do they upgrade that position? Do they bring in the star talent that they need to build around Jokic, to also build, some of the depth along the draft? Like I think if there's really any move that I thought was really the biggest signal of how Booth mismanaged this entire situation, it was Dario Saric. Dario Saric was brought in as a big to be a big complement to Nikola Jokic, and he has been an absolute non-factor for this team the entire season. Frankly, I loved, myself included, I loved the signing of Russell Westbrook because he was going into a situation where he really didn't quite have it. in some of his teams prior, you basically go into the Nuggets where you have some spacing, ability to do everything that you want to on the floor since OKC. So I think the marriage is actually pretty nice for Westbrook. It's just there's times where, mental lapses at times come through with Westbrook. And so I think it's one where he's probably good enough to still be on the team, but he cannot be one that's a full-time starter. Like, you need to be able to rely on someone who's going to be a well-trusted point guard at this point.
Gage is like the white David Blaine. That's where we're going with that. But LeBron is the best player in the league. Shut up.
Gage is going to pull a rabbit out of his hat in a minute. Yeah. But, one of the things, too, that we should point out is that Tim Connolly was the man in charge of the personnel when they won that championship. And that championship, they're only 2 years removed from that. And Connolly left to go to a pretty plum situation with the Timberwolves. There's rumors that he got actually some ownership stake in the move. So, he's, of course, going to bounce from the Nuggets for that. So it's not like the same person that was involved with building that roster was the one that got fired today. Again, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next year for the Nuggets, what that team looks like, what that lineup looks like, what that coaching staff looks like. Again, they're blessed with an ownership that I believe is the second richest ownership in the NBA. So they can certainly afford to bring in whatever coach that they were willing to, or at least pay for sure. Absolutely.
Who's the richest?
Steve Ballmer from the Clippers.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, hey, there's always Nico Harrison. I'm guessing he'll be available next offseason, so you can always bring him in.
If you want to trade Nikola Jokic, bring Nico Harrison on board.
There we go. Yeah. All right. Anything else that we want to cover on the Nuggets? Talked out?
I think we're good there.
Okay. Now, are they going to make the playoffs?
Who knows? It actually might.
I know they were like right there.
It might be in their best interest with the way things are going to where they just kind of ignore the playoffs altogether. But
I think even if they make it, they're a first round.
Mm-hmm.
They're out in the first.
It's all vibes at this point. The game. Yeah, the games from here on out are all vibes. I will say the one thing that if you're Adelman and you're going through each and every game as a coach, you're saying, hey, we got nothing to lose. We got nothing to lose now. And
I think a lot of people are expecting Adelson to be
Adelman,
the next hire. Oh, Adelman. I don't know.
Adelson is the owner of the Mavs that signed off on sending Lukic back.
Who's going to be the interim?
Adelman.
Okay, yeah. As far as I could see, it seems like a lot of people are expecting him
internally
to be the next head coach.
Internally, but obviously, in this day and age of any sport, they're going to do an exhaustive search, and kind of figure out what decision they want to go in terms of head coach and general manager, because that's the other part of this too. You want to make. You also want to make sure that the general manager that you're bringing on board is on board with a head coach that he would prefer. I mean, you don't want to kind of put his hands behind his back and be like, I'm sorry, we're going to bring you in, but by the way, this head coach that's in here right now is yours, whether you like it or not. Like, that's not a really good business model.
You think George Payton could do both? Nuggets and Broncos?
I know they
did that in New Orleans, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah, in New Orleans, Mickey Loomis was in charge of both the Saints and the Pelicans.
Yeah, but so just looking at the Western Conference standings, it's pretty interesting. I mean, OKC in just an absolute runaway.
Oh, yeah.
Houston in number 2 seed. But the Lakers with 48 wins at 3, Nuggets with 47 wins at 4, and then 5 through 8 have 46 wins. So it really is up in the air what this playoff is going to look like. Yeah. And obviously they have that play-in tournament for 7 through 10. But
yeah, one slip up and you could be done.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so that about covers it for the Nuggets. Obviously, we've got the Avs coming up in the playoffs as well, so we'll see how that plays out. They've been
Boo, hockey.
they've been making some baller moves and getting better. So I'm not going to go through all of it because it's like Russian names and French names, and I don't know.
Though you want to talk about contrast between the Avs and Nuggets right now. It's not even close.
Then there's the Rockies, and we're not even going to talk about them.
They're a minor league team.
Right. The only Russian name Mike was interested in was his mail order bride. But
I mean, she's still here. You want to talk to her? Sorry, babe. Just a joke. All right, so let's get into some
Mandy's
football.
gonna kill me.
You think her name is Mandy. Let's get into some football. Obviously, there's not a whole lot to talk about until we get into the draft, but I do first want to check in on some players that are beloved by Broncos fans.
Yeah.
Mainly Justin Simmons and Von Miller. Neither one have signed. They're still both free agents. Do we think they get signed? When do we think they sign? And who do we think they go to?
I think it's a fair assumption for all of us. They're not going to be coming back to Denver. I know that the emotion is, for some Bronco fans to be like, oh man, it'd be great to have Von Miller back. It'd be great to have Justin Simmons back. It's time to, basically move along, if you're a Broncos fan, because that's not going to end up happening. And, and Justin Simmons was on the Kay Adams show and gave a list of teams. If there's one thing in terms of, the Broncos being close to his heart, you don't need to look no further than when Kay brought up the Kansas City Chiefs and, he talked about, I'm sorry, I'm not a Kansas City.
Just want to beat him still.
I still want to just beat him. So I think you could pretty much put that one to bed, and why the Broncos are still kind of close to his heart. So I think that, for Justin, I still think it's best for him to go to a contender. I think it's one where, it's the best thing for him, in pursuit of a Super Bowl, as is Von Miller. I think that it would be fun for him to go to Philly, but the only reason why he would go to Philly is because of Christian Parker and the marriage that he and himself had. I will say, in some of the stuff like the Instagram posts, maybe even some of the stories, it does feel like he's reminiscing a little bit or enjoying life outside of football lately. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if he actually has a retirement. I actually wouldn't be the least bit surprised. And I know that'd be a bit soon-ish, but I wouldn't be the least bit surprised.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that if you're Justin Simmons, the Philadelphia connection isn't because of Vic Fangio. It's because of Christian Parker. We've talked about this before on the channel. It just seems like that relationship that him and Parker have is just really special. So that would be one reason why he would go to Philadelphia. But for me personally, though, I think that Justin Simmons to Denver, that ship has definitely sailed. We don't need him here, first of all. We've got 2 starting safeties. And second of all, I'm not afraid to just flat out say that Justin Simmons' best days are behind him in his career. And I think that retirement maybe wouldn't be the worst avenue for him at this point. I think he's got a family. He can go and just enjoy that relatively healthy without having really any major injuries at all in his career. So I think that would be an awesome situation for him. Come back to Denver, get inducted in the Ring of Fame, get yourself officially retired as a Denver Bronco. I'm totally down for that. As far as Von Miller is concerned, I've made my thoughts on Von Miller very clear. I think he can still play in a rotational role, and I want him here in Denver. Not for sentimental reasons. It's because I think that him and Nick Bonito rushing the passer on third down could be absolutely deadly. I think that Vaughn would get a lot of one-on-ones, and he'd be able to feast with one-on-ones. So that's just something I would consider. You're trying to win a championship this year. I understand that Dondre Tillman has caught a lot of eyes as a fourth edge rusher, but if you've got Von Miller as your fourth edge rusher, a first ballot Hall of Famer who's been a Super Bowl MVP, I'm sorry, that's the better option in my opinion. But I know there's not a lot of people in Broncos country that agree with that take.
You
I
know,
love that your daughter called you my dude.
by the way,
Dude.
Mike, I have to ask you, due to Mike's comment about Glenn being Newman, do you have that picture still? Because it all but confirms that Glenn is not Newman. Like his pose.
I think it's from this one because he called him the best heckler in the business, Newman.
But like it's of course the picture the famous album cover of him on the the couch, where he was basically George Costanza.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's not Newman. He's George Costanza.
Oh God.
I think
You guys are old.
I think Johnny's talking about. Shut up, Gage. I think Johnny's talking about Bray Wyatt with
Yeah.
with Gage's look. Rest in peace. Spectacles, testicles, watch wallet. No, I think, and like watching the Kay Adams interview with Justin, I know that Justin and Fangio didn't get along, but if the Eagles made an offer to Justin Simmons, kind of like they did last year, it just wasn't as much as the Falcons, I think he goes to Philly.
You know what is interesting? None of us really, except for the family itself, didn't really have the Falcons on the radar. And he chose the Falcons because a lot of us were kind of speculating, oh, maybe he's going to go to Buffalo, or maybe he'll go to, Detroit, or, maybe he'll, go to, some other team. The Falcons weren't even on our radar. And there was actually a point in time in the season where he probably is going to get his wish of playing for a playoff contender. So specifically now, and I will say, like, when you get to this point in your career, with whether you're Von Miller or you're Justin Simmons, I think you have a good idea of the market, meaning the market in the sense of like the dollar amount, the year amount of what you're going to end up signing for. It's just a matter of, what is the best place for you, location and, team and such. So making sure that, you can be able to land on your feet. I know that that's probably going to be something that he's to be praying about. And want to make sure that he makes the best decision for him and his family. So if it was me, now that the Eagles did win the Super Bowl, and despite all the Fangio stuff, I actually wouldn't mind it at all, in terms of him in Philadelphia, because, if you're kind of looking at the secondary, at everything that they need, they might need still a little bit of some help in that secondary.
They do.
So you put him there and they draft a third corner, they might be cooking with grease at that point.
I have a dark horse candidate as well, and they've got some money to burn. The New England Patriots. Where did Justin go to college? Boston, Massachusetts. If he wants to return out that area, he might think about New England.
He did go to Boston College.
Yep.
I don't know. Like, I feel, and even if the Patriots offered him more money, I still think that if it was like the Lions offering him a vet minimum, or the Eagles, or the Chiefs, or
he wants to play. He hasn't been in the playoffs still.
Yeah, he's gonna take less money to play in the playoffs and go for Super. And even if it's the Chiefs, like, don't get it twisted, he still feels some way about the Chiefs. But if they offered, he'd consider.
He's not going.
They may have reached out to the Chiefs already and been rebuffed, and so it's an easy.
Or
way
what
to
about
say,
one of the Florida teams? He is still a Florida native, and does he still maintain a residence down there?
I'm sure he does. So I mean, yeah, like Jacksonville, Tampa Bay.
Tampa would be one.
I mean, I know they have Winfield. And they might have some need. Maybe with the other safety spot. But Jacksonville would be one. They lost Andre Cisco, in free agency. So, I mean, Jacksonville certainly would be an idea. Miami is probably another one. I know that his brother, I think, is a big time Miami Dolphins fan. So maybe they can do something where he signs with the Miami Dolphins.
Man, his brother would be all loaded up with the Justin Simmons Miami Dolphins gear. And come on, Florida's appealing for multiple reasons. Warm weather, no state income tax. You get to keep more of your bread. So if you're going to sign a vet minimum deal, why not go do it in Florida where you're not going to give as much to Uncle Sam?
The other one, too, I will say, his dad's favorite team was the Dallas Cowboys. So so maybe Dallas, as far as maybe one that he could sign.
Isn't that another no income tax state?
It is. Yes, Texas is.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things with the Kay Adams interview, which is why personally I think that even with the Vic Fangio thing, I still think it'd be Philly, is because he mentioned that last year with Atlanta, he didn't have a lot of time to get to know the guys, get to know the plays, get to know the scheme. And so it was harder for him to get situated in Atlanta. Whereas if he goes to Philly, even if it's late, even if it's after training camp, he knows the coaching staff, he knows the scheme, he knows a majority of the verbiage. He'd be able to slide right in there and be good to go. And they just got rid of Gardner Johnson. So that's why I think personally it would be Philly. But
and we know that the NFL is also a close-knit community. And look, it didn't work out long-term here, but we certainly know that there was a team who took a chance on this player who was also a former Denver Bronco that I would be using as a resource, and that'd be Caden Stearns. Caden Stearns signed with Philly. So maybe you're having a phone call with Stearns about, hey, how was this experience like? Obviously, it didn't end on the terms that you wish you would down there in Philly. But what was that experience like? And you kind of glean on that, and then you use that, and maybe you it helps make you a decision to go to Philadelphia. So, I mean, admittedly, you're spot on. You look at probably the experience and everything that is there. There might not be more experience for him that he'd be looking for than the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah. All right. So we didn't talk much about Vaughn, but I mean, at this point, where would Vaughn even go? I mean, other than hunting for a Super Bowl.
Actually, as I will say, as much as I brought up Dallas for Justin, Dallas is a fun one for Vaughn, because it's like, we know he grew up into, that Texas area. Like, I mean, like he's got that cowboy in him. Like, I would love to see, him with Micah Parsons, and kind of return the favor a little bit, like DeMarcus Ware came to Denver, right? And then, you get Vaughn, go over to Dallas, and I don't know, just hypothetically, like he wears 94 for DeMarcus Ware, it's kind of like an ode for Ware, type of deal. But like, I would love to see that as far as, him getting the chance to play for the Dallas Cowboys and everything. So that's just a team that just like selfishly, like it would be really cool to see him at the tail end of his career, finally get a chance to play for a team like the Houston Texans or like, the Dallas Cowboys, like in that local, Texas area.
I mean, if he really wants a ring, go to Houston, bro. They are a much better situation than Dallas. I understand that he's from Dallas, but if you want to play for a Texas team, go play for the Texans. And I think that you will have a lot more respect from Broncos country if you do that, because there are a lot of Broncos fans, and I'm one of them, who hates the Dallas Cowboys. I despise the Cowboys. I've despised the Cowboys since I was a kid. In fact, that's why I became a Denver Broncos fan. Where I'm from in southwestern New Mexico, you're either a Cowboys fan, a Steelers fan, a few Raiders fans there, or a Broncos fan. And
Cardinals?
Choose wisely.
No Cardinals.
No Cardinals?
Nope.
Really?
Even though that's really the closest geographical team. Nope. It's all like Cowboys and Steelers and all like the bandwagon teams. But that's why I became a Broncos fan. If arguably my favorite Denver Bronco to ever put on the orange and blue goes to the Dallas Cowboys, I will shed some grown man tears.
And he'll have no sleeves to wipe them off with.
None. He's got the hat, though. You can catch him.
Yep.
All right. So the next thing that I want to bring up is, we did sign a punter. Don't know if he's going to stick around. Don't know if they're looking for somebody better. But there's been some talk on Twitter. And after watching the UFL, the first couple of games in the UFL, Marquette King is hitting that ball like nobody's business right now. He's already talked about how he's in a better mindset. I would not mind going after Marquette King and bringing him back to the Broncos.
I think that, it's one where it's a fun story. But I just think at this point, when they brought in Hack, I think at this point they want to have a youth battle or a young punter come in and compete with him. And if Hack wins, then he'll end up being the first left-footed punter since Corliss Waitman that the Broncos have had. So if
the first left-footed punter and 2 punters. Wow, that's quite this.
I was going to say,
holy mackerel!
Yeah, I was going to say he was the first. He will be the first left-footed punter since Corliss Waitman. There we go.
Right, you said it right. I'm just saying it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. But I just think that they're going to probably bring in a younger punter and they're going to have a camp battle. Exactly to what actually Gage said this on the show probably a couple weeks ago, which was the same thing kind of happened with Matt Prater to Brandon McManus, and then obviously Brandon McManus to the kicker that we ended up having, which was like Brett Maher, and then from Brett Maher, and then ended up being Will Lutz. So I think you're going to end up with a competition, and if it ends up being Hack, it ends up being Hack, and if it ends up being a younger player, rookie player, who knows? I will say it would be worth the Broncos to scour the UFL market though for a punter, whether that is Marquette King, and maybe that is the route that they go, because certainly they struck gold in the shrewd move that they did last year with Dondrea Tillman.
Yeah, well, Marquette King is easily the best punter in the UFL right now, and it's not close. He is booming them. And I can understand the argument of a youth movement, but let's say that they sign an undrafted punter and he doesn't blow them away, and Matt Hawk doesn't blow him away, or Matt Hack as we call him around here. Let's say that they don't blow him away and they just do what they did when they got Will Lutz. They'll go out and just sign somebody else or trade for somebody else, and King could be on that short list. I think that he very much deserves another opportunity in the NFL. He said it himself that he's in a much better headspace now than he was last time in Denver, and that might be code word for Tom McMahon is no longer there, so I would be more than happy to go back to Denver. So I think that it could happen. I don't see why it shouldn't happen, but I also understand the argument that you want to go with a youth movement there at punter. There are some good punters in this draft. There's one out of Oklahoma. There's one out of, I believe, Auburn that the Broncos actually just held on a visit with. So there are some good punters out there, but Marquette King would be fun.
But if there's one position that you really can bring an old guy in or an older guy in, and it's not going to really, hurt you on the field, it is in the punting position. I mean, how many hits has he taken over the years? Like if his leg is still proving to be strong, it could be kicking on any field. I think it's worth bringing him in, even for a tryout, just as soon as the season ends, and just seeing how things are going. All the players from, and I'm talking about the front office players and the coaching staff of the Broncos from his last time here are gone. So or all is gone. So it's, it's a fresh start.
Yeah.
Why not? If the guy's killing it, let's bring him in.
Nonetheless, I will say I trust Darren Rizzi. I trust Darren Rizzi, and I do trust Sean Payton and the decision that they want to do. So if that's the move that they want to go forward with, I am all for it, because I mean, as was laid out, I mean, the situation could not be sweeter for King in the sense that it's a fresh slate. And plus, it'd be great to have a punter again with aura, with a sleeve on his arm, some swagger to do the dancing, after he booms like a 60-yard punt, which is inside the 20, where he downs Patrick Mahomes, on like the 4-yard line, and he just does that little dancing move. So, I mean, yeah, who wouldn't love a punter with some aura?
So I'm just realizing Cam is dressed like an IndyCar driver tonight. Does anyone else?
Yes.
I'm in my Tony Stewart.
He's going to be interviewed in the pits in 5 minutes.
All right. So we get into draft stuff. I think that's the next logical place to go, since the draft is coming up in just a little bit. I kind of want to just go through the first round, maybe do like the first top 6, top 10, something like that. Just kind of hit, and then we'll go into like what we think the Broncos will do and the possibilities and who we think will be there. So I think, obviously we'll start with the first pick, which is the Titans. And I hope I'm not like ruining anybody's take, but since they just canceled workouts and meetings with Shedeur and with Travis Hunter, I'm assuming that either means Cam Ward or trade out.
I would say it's the first part. They're going to go Cam Ward.
I would agree.
And actually, it's probably the best decision. I think if there's any quarterback between the two of them who got better exponentially year after year after year, and you look in this class, it was Cam Ward. I mean, he got exponentially better from when he was at Incarnate Ward to Washington State to Miami. That is something that you can possibly build off of if you are a face of the franchise type of quarterback. So you put him in an offense which hopefully works. Obviously, Tennessee's maybe not necessarily the ideal spot for him, necessarily just with what we know in the history of Tennessee. But if Brian Callahan and Bill Callahan can work a really good scheme around him, offensive line wise, and build around him, and really give him the right development, I think you will see a pretty good quarterback. I will say he does have a really high ceiling, like a Ben Roethlisberger type ceiling to him. So I would not be the least bit surprised if he hit, but I also, in this day and age of this quarterback class, wouldn't be the least bit surprised if he didn't either. It just goes to show you how volatile this quarterback class really is.
I'm scared about the situation that Cam Ward is going to be entering there in Tennessee because Brian Callahan, I'm sorry, he is going to be fired after next year. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's going to be fired, and it's going to be a whole different regime in there in Tennessee, a new offensive system for Cam Ward in his sophomore year. He's getting the Caleb Williams treatment. It's the Chicago Bears treatment for all of their quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, man. It is just not a good situation. There's a reason why the Titans have the number 1 overall pick. It's because they're the worst organization in football right now from top to bottom. Their ownership sucks, their coaching sucks, and quite frankly, their players suck as well. Will Levis was the worst quarterback in the NFL, and by default, they're going to be a better football team just by upgrading that position alone. But I'm sorry, man. He's being set up to fail there in Tennessee, and I'm very scared that we're going to have yet another first-round quarterback bust in Cam Ward because of the shitty situation he is walking into.
But he made some good money off of mayonnaise, so more power to Will Levis on that one.
Levis is a walking meme for sure.
Put it in your coffee.
I know Gage is like pissing in Will's mayonnaise-filled coffee right now.
Probably tastes better that way.
All right, second pick should be.
Second pick is the Browns. Yeah. And personally, and I said this before in the green room before we started the show, if you look at Kevin Stefanski and when he's been successful, it's when he has a pocket passer as a quarterback. You look at Joe Flacco, you look at Baker Mayfield, you look at Kirk Cousins. Those are all quarterbacks that had their best years with Kevin Stefanski. So if they're going to take a player that fits the system, you have to go Shedeur.
So Cleveland is like the perfect team when you talk about this is how bad they are. But it's just it's the perfect team of if we were running a team, what we would do versus what we think they will do. Because I think what they should do is draft Shedeur Sanders. That's what they should do. I don't think they do that. I actually don't think they do that. I think they go with the two best players in the draft, which is either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, which sucks because I am a Travis Hunter fan, and so seeing him go to Cleveland would just royally suck for him to go to that kind of franchise. I think with the way that I'm reading it lately, it seems like it is between those two, and it's probably going to end up being Abdul Carter, which from that side of things is a really scary situation defensively because now you're going to have Myles Garrett to defend and you're going to have Abdul Carter to defend. So it is a very scary combination. I will say, though, if they do go quarterback, something of note is, and I know we talked about this, was in Myles Garrett's interview, he did say he had a pretty good idea of who that quarterback is going to end up being. So is that going to end up being Shedeur Sanders, or is that going to end up being Kirk Cousins? We're waiting to find out.
And man, a quarterback?
What?
Did they even sign a quarterback?
Kenny Pickett.
Kenny Pickett. They traded Kenny Pickett.
Oh,
okay. So no, they haven't signed a quarterback yet.
No, they're completely screwed.
Man, as far as the Cleveland Browns are concerned, it's exactly what Cam said. It's like what they should do versus what they probably will do. I think a lot of NFL front offices are overthinking things with Shedeur Sanders. I think that if you just understand what he is as a player and not expect him to be somebody that he's not, then he is absolutely worthy of the second overall pick. And the Cleveland Browns have been an absolute disaster for the last several years because of quarterback. Thank you so much for the $10, man. Really appreciate it. Helps us keep the lights on here on the 5280 podcast. But
I hope we don't get that desperate.
Mics are flickering. Yeah.
Glenn, are we struggling?
But no, man. The
just had to sell my Drew Lock jersey. Yeah.
Go ahead, Gage.
Anytime that you have an obvious decision that should be made with the Cleveland Browns, they're going to make the exact opposite of that decision. So I think they're going to ultimately go with Abdul Carter. That's what the latest reports have indicated. And it also seems that the New York Giants have a direction that they're going to go as well. We'll address that in a second. But it seems that the top three in the draft might be set in stone as of right now.
Mm-hmm.
So who are you? Who are you thinking, Gage? Like what
for the New York Giants? I was
no for Cleveland. Like who would
Abdul
they?
Carter.
Abdul Carter.
Okay, you guys.
I said Abdul Carter.
So that still leaves Travis Hunter, and that still leaves Shedeur Sanders, and we get into the Giants, who have the third pick. And I think I know what they're going to do. If Shedeur's there, I think they're going to take him, but they shouldn't. I don't think they should. They have quarterbacks that they just brought in. You need offensive line. For the love of God, draft a tackle.
Do they, though?
What?
I would say they do. I would definitely say, yeah, they could use some offensive line help, but I don't think that's the direction they go, and I don't think Shedeur's the direction they go either.
Yeah, I don't think
Travis Hunter here. Then.
You think Travis?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Best player available.
But then the question remains, does Joe Shane keep his job if he doesn't take a quarterback?
This is where my video from yesterday comes into
right?
play.
Like Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are they're on the hottest of seats in the NFL right now. If they don't take a quarterback,
but Gage will get to
do
that.
They keep their job.
If it's what I think, it's a theory I was kind of posing myself, like when this kind of broke about like how interested they were in both of those players. So go on, Gage. Like if that's the theory that I'm thinking.
Okay, here's where I'm at with this. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll know that this is the 1 year that they have. They have to get this right. And if they don't get it right, they're going to be fired. But that means that you can also swing for the fences here. Because if you mess up, you're still getting fired. Mm-hmm. So I think you take Travis Hunter with the third overall pick. That's pretty clear. But lately, there has been a lot of buzz about Jackson Dart, the quarterback out of Ole Miss, going in the first round. I think he's talented. First round talent? No. I think he's a second round talent. But whenever you have a team that's desperate for a quarterback and have jobs depending on getting a quarterback, then we see teams make stupid decisions. The Denver Broncos have made certain stupid decisions like this. Mm-hmm. So my proposal is the New York Giants might want to get in front of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are at the 21st overall pick. The Denver Broncos have the pick right in front of them. The Broncos could trade down with the Giants to number 34. That's the second pick in the second round. The Giants have that pick, and then they would have to send their first round pick from 2026, which, let's just be honest here, is probably going to be better or at least equal to the 20th overall pick at best. I think realistically it's probably going to be a top 10 pick. So you're punting your first round. Yeah, the Giants picks. You're punting your pick for the first round for 1 year in hopes that that pick will get better, and you're picking up a second round pick as well. So I think you do that if you're Denver, and that would be the New York Jets coming up out of pure desperation and pure stupidity. And if it doesn't work out, then Joe Shane and Brian Dable are gone anyway, and it doesn't matter.
If the Broncos have the 34th pick and the 51st pick, they could really still accomplish those two position players that they would probably be filling with 20 and 51 anyway. I mean, I'm not saying it would be the same people, but they could certainly have some level of equivalent and be set up for next year.
Yeah, and I think that definitely depends on who we think Denver's going to take in the first. Because, like, for example, let's say Derek Harmon. He's not going to be there at 34. No. But Travion Henderson, running back from Ohio State, could be. Right?
Could be. That's the key word, could be.
Mm-hmm.
I think for my scenario was the CJ Stroud scenario. Not necessarily like with what the Giants would do. Yeah, I think they take Travis Hunter, but in the vein of them being aggressive and outshining the New York Jets, who have the pick at pick 7, they do the thing that is probably the most aggressive thing that you could possibly do, and that is get in front of the Saints and take Shedeur Sanders inside the top 10. So I think that if look, it's very risky, but in the vein of building this team with Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, and Malik Neighbors, and being rather aggressive with it and taking that chance that, you might get fired, why not? Like, absolutely, why not? So as much as, you talk about Jackson Dart, I would absolutely love the idea for them to be that aggressive and that dumb, to go trade all the way up and get, Shedeur Sanders, because obviously the latest buzz of right now is Shedeur, if they go Travis Hunter, is probably going to be taken, as it seems, by the New Orleans Saints. So you do that.
But how would you, Cam? What would you envision that the Giants would need to do to make that jump? And why would the Jets take that trade?
I'm not saying Jets. I'm just saying like they would like outshine like the Jets media stuff because of so they would have to like jump like into like Carolina's spot.
What's crazy is Dane Brugler just came out with his five round mock, and he has the Jets taking Jackson Dart at the 7th pick.
Yeah,
I mean,
so this is
quarterback.
So this is my question for you then. Let's say that Shedeur makes it past Tennessee, makes it past Cleveland, makes it past the Giants. Where does he go? Do you think Saints? Do you think he falls? Where does he go?
There's a couple teams, and I have one that's very thanks to my mainly Broncos co-host. It's been on my mind lately, the last week or so. If we want to get spicy, there's been one team in my mind that I just can't get out. Shedeur Sanders with the Mike McDaniel offense.
Ooh, damn. That would be something, dude.
I mean, you already have
the upgraded model over Tua.
Yeah, I mean, like you have Shedeur Sanders with Mike McDaniel. You have your insurance policy in case Tua gets injured. Obviously, there's the whole contract situation. But the Miami Dolphins, the New Orleans Saints. I wouldn't rule out the Dallas Cowboys, despite the fact of them adding Joe Milton. But I mean, as far as just to pure toxicity, I want to see Shedeur Sanders with the Miami Dolphins and see the timeline just go crazy.
I'm down.
Well, it's one of those things too when you have a rookie quarterback salary coupled with an overpriced vet salary that you combine the two and it doesn't seem so bad, right? So like to have a backup for Tua that's, I mean, I don't know, Zach Wilson is making 6 or 8 this year, something along those lines, 6 maybe.
Mhm.
But to have a rookie 5-year deal with when your starting quarterback has those kind of long-term retirement level injury concerns,
Mhm.
and that would be pretty spectacular.
Mhm.
Tyreek Hill might change his mind.
I was gonna say, yeah, he might,
Yeah.
He might pull back that trade request.
Shador would definitely sling it down to Tyreek, that's for sure.
Mhm.
He sees press coverage with Tyreek. Oh, yeah, we're going.
So don't care about the Patriots. Don't care about the Jags. I don't give a crap who they pick. Raiders at 6.
Somewhere in the Patriots or Jags, it's probably going to be Armand Membo, the tackle out of Missouri.
Yeah.
For the Patriots
or Jags. I think either. I think Patriots more realistically because
you would hope the Patriots.
Is that the vibe you're getting down there, Glenn? I mean, like from listening to like maybe some of the radio down there, and maybe from some of the people, like the Patriots might be wanting to go offensive tackle, or they wanting to go maybe Ted McMillan.
I don't listen to Patriot talk radio.
They're still talking about bringing Tom Brady back.
Yeah, right. No, I think the fans here are just really thinking mostly. I mean, offensive line makes the most sense, but I think the fans here really are thinking we need somebody for Drake May to throw to.
So, I'm just thinking of the way
tried for Ayuk, it didn't work. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So we get to the Raiders at 6. I think everybody's hearing Genty to the Raiders, which I don't like.
So this, just like we talk about the Browns, and I'm not trying to clown the Raiders, but it's just like this is another one of those teams where it's like, this is what I would do, but this is probably what they will do. And I think that what they will do is draft Genty. What they actually should do is not take Genty. And because it is a deep running back class, if Mason Graham falls to you, you can take Mason Graham at 6, or if Ted McMillan is there, you could be able to take Ted McMillan. So I mean, like they'll have some options. But like I just think that it's going to be I will say, if Ted is by chance available for them at 6, it will make the decision, I think, a bit harder for them in terms of whether or not they want to actually take Ashton Genty or not.
So has McMillan climbed back? Like he had fallen down in the first round. Is he now shot back to the top 10 in your guys' view?
He had always stayed there for me. I think that the film stuff that came out as of late, for full disclosure, that was from 2 years ago. And so the fact that it's been coming out makes you wonder why. Makes you wonder, why is it coming out? Like, is it truly to just bring down his draft stock? Because he certainly didn't play like it. Like, he didn't certainly play like, like he watches film. Like, he plays like an absolute dominant wide receiver, in terms of when he was at Arizona. So I will say, though, I mean, there's a legitimate conversation of who's wide receiver 1 in this class, with him and some others. But I just think that I think the way it's been going and the way that there's some team heavy needs in the top 10, it just seemed like he had always been there inside the top 10. I do have a team outside of the top 10, though, that would maybe trade inside the top 10 or move up for him. And that would be the Seattle Seahawks. If you really want to replace DK Metcalf, basically move up if you want to, and go take Ted McMillan. Obviously, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be another one. But yeah, Seattle Seahawks would be a great one.
That's not fair.
Bringing up the Seahawks, though, Cam. I know you love him. Yeah. But I know you love Emeka. Are you worried about him being taken by the Seahawks ahead of the Broncos?
I don't think he goes there. I really don't.
I don't think that's the right fit for him.
No. Yeah, especially with JSN and Cooper Kupp there now.
Yeah, exactly. I think that they'd just be adding another one of the same mold of player with adding Ibuka, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me. But as far as the Raiders are concerned with Genty, that's pretty much a shoe-in. It's been a shoe-in ever since the beginning of the offseason before they even hired Pete Carroll. And after hiring Pete Carroll and him being just emphatically obsessed with running the football, you know that he wants to bring in
the Super Bowl.
Yeah, true. You know he wants to bring in a guy that can almost be like their Marshawn Lynch type of player. I think Beast Mode would absolutely sign off on this. Ashton Genty to the Raiders has been kind of the worst kept secret in the NFL since the beginning of the offseason process. It was either the Raiders or the Cowboys, and the Raiders have first priority, so they're going to get him before Dallas could.
Yep. Yeah, was it Raiders, Bears, Cowboys, Broncos. Those are have all been the teams with, Ashton Genty.
And I think I can come out and say this now because it's very obvious that we're not going to get him. Greg Pinner wanted Ashton Genty. That was something that was very well known at the beginning of the offseason in the media community, is that Greg Pinner was pounding the table for Genty, but it's been very apparent that Denver has no chance in hell to get him. He is going to the Raiders at 6.
Yeah, you'd have to get into the top 10, and you wouldn't be able to. Well, you'd have to get in the top 5 because the Raiders aren't going to trade the pick with you.
And there's no team in the top 5 that's going to come down to the 20th pick. So, yeah, there's no way it's happening.
Well, there's always the Browns.
There's always the Browns.
That out there. There's always the Browns.
But funny enough, though, it is the Raiders, and knowing their history, they could just surprise us all and take Maxwell Hairston at 6. So it's been done before.
Doing Farrell over Josh Hines Allen.
They're gonna skip over Genty and get Scatabo at 6.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
bro,
that would be funny. All right, so we don't really get to any AFC West teams until later, but I am curious about the Bears. They go at 10, and they have had a hell of a free agency.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with their coach.
Yeah.
I mean, starting with their coach, quite honestly.
I think they're free to go best player available here. This could be the Ted McMillan spot.
Maybe.
Ted McMillan, or maybe they go tight end. Maybe a Tyler Warren or a Colston Loveland.
I think Mel Kiper's latest mock had them going with Tyler Warren.
I have Tyler Warren to the Jets, so I haven't gone a bit earlier. Actually,
you have Tyler Warren going 7?
I have Tyler Warren going 7 to the Jets. I think that what the Bears are probably going to end up doing is actually a bit spicy to a degree, but it's also something that we've been hearing maybe about a month ago. And that is, I actually think that running back is the position that they target. And I think that it would not be the least bit surprising if they took Omari and Hampton at 10.
I would laugh so hard if they did that. Omari and Hampton at 10 is such an overdraft.
I wouldn't be. I feel you, but I'm just saying, that is the one thing that has been the consistent of the Peyton tree is they don't care about draft placement. I'll just use it as an example. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if the Chicago Bears decided to be like, hey, if we want to move on from DeAndre Swift, let's go draft Travion Henderson at 10.
I'd be better with that than I would Hampton.
But it's just it's one of those things. They don't care about draft board. They just don't care about draft board. They don't care about what anybody else says. We're going to be able to draft the best player that is on our board, no matter what that position is. And so I just have this feeling that they want to be going running back, Genty or not.
So why Travion over Omari and Hampton?
Hampton gives me serious Javonte Williams vibes, man. I don't like his vision whatsoever. I think that he fights too aggressively for yards, and that's going to lead to him getting injured. I'm just worried about his game at the NFL level. I think Henderson's kind of yes, Landon. I would be over the freaking moon if they got him. Seriously. That he's one of my top running backs that I have on my board. I think that Omari and Hampton's more akin to kind of a middle of the road second round player than he is a first round player. But because of all the buzz he's been getting from front offices, I think he's going to go higher than that. I think that would be a waste.
So would you take Travion over Caleb Johnson?
No, I think I'd probably go Caleb Johnson personally, but it's kind of a pick your flavor situation here. And I think the Broncos' flavor would probably be Caleb Johnson over Travion Henderson, but I would not be upset with either one of them, quite frankly.
So who's going to be there at 51?
I think Caleb Johnson will be there at 51.
Yeah, I think Travion goes in the 30s.
Yeah. I actually think that there's a chance Travion could be taken in the first round. It's not likely, but I think that there is certainly a chance he could be taken in the first round.
Well, that's where I was going to go with the Chiefs at 31. I mean, that's like the sweet spot for Travion. Maybe a little high, but if Amarion's gone, Genty's gone.
But Mike, they're not. They shouldn't. They should not go running back with their draft pick. They should be going offensive line.
They might have PTSD from taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round, and they got such a big hit with Isaiah Pacheco in the 7th round. I don't think they're going to invest a first-round pick in a back never again.
I will say I'm higher than Amari, like to what Gage is saying on Amari and Hampton, but because I probably have the DeMarco Murray comp for Amari and Hampton, not Javonte Williams, because I think he's better than Javonte Williams. Because I think that the thing that is a bit different for me in terms of Caleb Johnson over Amari and Hampton is just seeing him so much with him being in the Big Ten. Like, he's my running back too, but it's a rather close one. But it's one where it's like you could just see him shoulder the workload and be a 3-down back, which is something that's not talked about with Caleb Johnson. And it's a bit of a spicy take, but if Ashton Genty did not have the year that he had, we would be talking about Caleb Johnson as running back 1. I actually mean that because of the year that Caleb Johnson had and being the type of offense that, he was there with Iowa, which was the entire offense with Iowa, which, doesn't take much. Like, he was basically facing 8 to 9 to even 10 stack boxes on a consistent basis and going to the house every single time. That alone should give a lot of teams the opportunity to rise aboard. So I say that, I think Caleb Johnson will be there at 51, but if he was taken in that threshold of 30 to 40, would I be surprised? Absolutely not, because he probably should be.
If you could get, just to quickly address this with Harold Fannin, if you could get, a Harold Fannin and a Mason Taylor, or a Harold Fannin and a Terrence Ferguson, or a Harold Fannin and a Jackson Hawes, that was the tight end on the last show that I couldn't remember his name, the tight end out of Georgia Tech, one of the best blocking tight ends in this class. I am so down for that. But just to kind of piggyback on the Caleb Johnson conversation here, I think that he's got true 3-down potential. Mm-hmm. He's somebody who could honestly fill a joker role at the running back position, and that's what Sean Payton wants. He wants somebody who can be versatile, and can be a mismatch nightmare at multiple different positions, and I think Caleb Johnson can do that.
And he fits it. And I think that's the thing too for me. When you look at the fits for this team, running back wise of the top 5, they all fit. I would just say that. They all fit. All 5 of these running backs fit. But I just think that if you're looking at it, Travion Henderson is like the Bo Nix of running backs. Travion Henderson is like the perfect fit for what Sean Payton wants to do. Then you go to Caleb Johnson. Then you go to probably Omari and Hampton. And then you go down to, Quinshon Judkins, right? And I only use that 4 because Ashton Genty's not going to be there, because we know that Ashton Genty's like the perfect fit. But I think that you go a bit later in the rounds, like the one player that I think we should be talking more about in terms of Sean Payton is Jaden Blue. Like, I think that Jaden Blue is a player that is actually going to be doing a little bit more of a joker type of situation where, like, if there was not enough, or if there was less fumbling issues for Blue, you would be talking about a player that has a very, very high draft stock. And I think it's probably one of the reasons why in one of the mock drafts that it was quite the crash out mock draft that What's-His-Face did on ESPN or NFL Network, where he took Colston Loveland and then he took Jaden Blue in the 2nd round. If he didn't have the fumbling issues, we probably would be talking about Blue in the second round. But he is a dynamic receiving threat out of the backfield that parallels Trevion Henderson.
And he go fast.
Yeah.
So did you hear anything about Fannon's visit, by the way, to the Broncos?
No.
I mean, when you see that he had over 100 receptions last season alone in 13 games, I mean, that is absolutely remarkable for a touchdown.
You know, it's funny. We're actually going to be having this discussion, this topic actually tomorrow on mainly, but I think that like it's so fun to have this conversation because I think that the tight end position, the running back position is one, tight end specifically, since you brought up tight end, there's so many combinations that they can go with. Like, so Gage brought up Mason Taylor, Terrence Ferguson, and Jackson Hayes, right? Jalen Conyers from Texas Tech that Judson mentioned in the comments is one that's been kind of creeping up on my radar a little bit. Like, he's almost like a poor man's Tyler Warren in a way. Like, I mean, he was able to do things at a Wildcat, able to do things, be a bit more versatile. So, like, I think the thing with Evan Ingram is, like, you afford yourself the opportunity of going so many different directions. And they're not wrong. Like, you can go out and get a Mason Taylor. You can go out and get a Terrence Ferguson. Or you can go out and draft your developmental player with a very high ceiling, like a Harold Fannin, where you could be able to work on his blocking, which they've said before, you could be able to work on his run blocking, make him a bit more of a complementary piece to Evan Ingram as, you groom his role. You could even do the same thing with Aronde Gadsden, which I think is the more like fun one for me, because like he's got such a high ceiling of a prospect for tight end. You get his run blocking in check, you're talking about a player that is who was he, a wide receiver? Was he a tight end coming into this draft? You get his blocking in check there. Like, he's a dynamic player that you could be able to pair with Evan Ingram at that point.
For me, it's like if you bring in Fannin, you keep him to marinate for a couple of years behind Evan Ingram, and then you turn him loose as your H in a couple of years. Then you still bring in a Taylor, a Jackson Haas, a Ferguson, maybe even a Luke Lachey as your Y guy. You just need a Y guy because Adam Troutman does not move the needle for me, damn it. I cannot stand freaking Adam Troutman.
Okay, so that brings us to Denver 20. Who do we think Denver takes at 20?
I mean, it all depends on who's there, right? Like, who's the best player available? That's my philosophy, is you take the best player available. So if Kenneth Grant's there, if Derek Harmon's there, then you go in that direction. If one of the wide receivers is there, Luther Burden, if Tet's fallen that far, do you go that direction? Maybe Ibuka. That's possible, but I don't know if that's probable per se. Then you obviously also have running back, if the running back that you really like is there. So there's all these different directions that you can go. And I don't think any of them's wrong. Kind of like Cam said, I don't think any of them's wrong.
What about trading back? Under what scenario would they trade back, even outside of a team wanting to jump the Steelers for a quarterback?
Sure. I mean, there might be a few. It's just all about, like, what are you going to get in return? My scenario for a trade back is probably like the dream scenario. I don't know what George Payton and Sean Payton are thinking about in terms of what would be like fair compensation in return.
I think if you actually like talk to a lot of Bronco fans, like their perfect situation, just in general, they take the player that they want at 20 out of it, or scenarios of players that they want at 20. The perfect scenario for them is to basically recreate what happened in 2012, which was trade out of the first round entirely and just accumulate so many draft picks. Because like this is such the draft class to do it with, players like running back or positions like running back, wide receiver, and tight end. So like that is the perfect situation for you. But at the same time, it takes two. Like it takes two. Like, you have to find that second team to be able to willing to do that. And also like Sean Payton in his history has not been able to trade back in any of the times that he's, been there. I will say, as far as kind of like for some full disclosure there, the one time that he was able to trade back was in the early years with the Saints. So if you're looking at the early years with the Broncos, there might be a situation where, okay, maybe they do trade back. But yeah.
I don't even have the draft order, but I'm thinking of like even like a trade back to a team picking like 26, 27, something like that, where the Broncos still have a first round pick. They can maybe pick up a second and a fifth or something like that, get into the fifth round and still maintain that first round pick. But one of the things with trading behind them is that those teams are already good. So they may not have a lot of holes to fill, so to speak, but so they might want to jump up or perhaps this is pure speculation, but they could jump up just to try to get that guy that they think could be the absolute difference maker in the season.
You know what?
You're looking at the Panthers, the Texans, the Ravens, and the Lions.
So
the ones in the 25 to like 28 range.
Well, so that I will say, if you look at maybe like one team in general that would probably be maybe the Rams. Like, if I was to like look at it, I mean, like they need someone to, replace Matt Stafford down the line. And frankly, there is no quarterback that would be perfect to learn under than Matt Stafford. So them taking Jackson Dart, would be perfect for them. So if you are looking at a team that was in that first round, having the Rams come in and basically moving up, and if you luck out at getting a first round pick because it's a quarterback, that would be perfect. But you still maintain your first round pick this year, maybe get a first round pick next year because of that. So like, I don't know. The Rams to me is like the one team in that type of situation where it would be perfect.
If a team's trading up for a quarterback, then you're going to charge them an extra first-round pick. That's just the quarterback tax.
Yeah.
We saw that precedent set when the Chicago Bears traded up with the New York Giants to select Justin Fields. They had to give up their first rounder the next year. So I think that if you're going to move up, then the quarterback tax is your first rounder the following year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the trading back. I don't know. To me, like,
dude,
there's.
What if you get a top 10 pick next year from the New York Giants, plus your first round pick?
You can't tell me that's not at all.
Okay. I would think about that one. Yes, that
would be amazing. I mean,
but again, for me, like I'm not as high on Denver picking an offensive weapon at 20. I think that they go defense, and for me, it's either Derek Harmon or Kenneth Grant, but I think Derek Harmon goes between 10 and 18. I don't think he's there. So if you're going to go Kenneth Grant, I don't know if you want to trade back, because imagine, you got a 6'5", 334-pound defensive tackle right next to DJ Jones, who's excellent at run stopping and is only going to get better at bull rushing. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that.
But by the same token, does that even make any sense because you re-signed DJ Jones to a 3-year deal? You should be looking at players like a Derek Harmon, a Walter Nolan, who could be possibly like your JFM replacement, in terms of beefing up that. I don't disagree. Like, I mean, adding Kenneth Grant would be.
Grant doesn't replace DJ Jones.
He's a huge like nose tackle, like interior defense alignment to where, like he would possibly be a replacement for DJ Jones down the line. But I'm with you in a sense, though, that Mike, like, I just think that if Grant and Harmon are going early, which is what I suspect, therein lies why my agenda is what it is, which is the Emeka Egbuka agenda of, drafting him at 20. There is no better type of player that they could ever draft. That is, I mean, like, if you were to ask me who is the safest pick for the Denver Broncos to take that will give them the biggest impact, long-term and immediate, it is Emeka Egbuka. He fits the locker room. He fits everything that Sean Payton is looking for in a run-blocking wide receiver. He plays inside. He plays outside. Sure, he played 80% of the snaps inside at Ohio State. Justin Jefferson played 98% of the snaps inside in the slot for LSU. We overthought it. He became the best wide receiver in football. Don't ever think Emeka Egbuka. He is one of the top wide receivers in this class, and he fits the middle of the field that Sean Payton is looking for. He is the perfect complement to Cortland Sutton. Draft Emeka Egbuka at 20.
There you go, Cam.
Uh,
I maybe
Cam just challenging
Egbuka a little bit. I maybe am, and I am kind of in agreement. I'm a little bit scared that the top defensive tackles are going to be gone by this point. I want Kenneth Grant or Derek Harmon. I desperately do. I want size on this defensive line because DJ Jones is probably your biggest guy, and he's still only about 300 pounds. I want 330, 340-pound defensive linemen, guys who can just take up 2 gaps by just standing there. That's what I want, and I think that the Broncos, if they have the opportunity to get that in the first round, that's the direction you go. That would likely be the best player available. If not, then you could definitely go in the direction of Egbuka, and maybe I am guilty of overthinking him as a player because I just see him as a slot guy, but I've been wrong about those type of players before, and this wouldn't be the first time.
Well, and again, I go back to I still think that the front office and the coaching staff likes the wide receiver room the way it is. It's nothing against Egbuka. Like I understand wanting to go that way, but if you have any one of those 2 defensive tackles, and I've said this before, I'm not sold on DJ Jones. I don't mind him. I like him.
They
but I'm not
really
sold
love
on
him,
right? Like we still struggled at points in the run game with DJ Jones in there. So for me, it's if you have one of those defensive tackles there, I think he makes a bigger impact to the Denver Broncos this coming season than a wide receiver would in the draft.
I disagree. Like I just think that if you're drafting a guy like a Derek Harmon or you're drafting a guy, not a wrong decision by any means, by the way, like taking Harmon and like even a Kenneth Grant, it's not a wrong decision. You're building that though for more the long term. Again, not the not hating that in one bit, but Egbuka will be your quarterback's best friend, and the whole idea for drafting Egbuka is for it to be your best complement to Cortland Sutton, and there's no better player to actually have to complement Cortland Sutton, even if you extend him or not extend him. So I mean, like he can work the middle of the field. Evan Ingram will thank you. And also, too, just like we're having a running back conversation for passing on a running back, you can pass on an interior defensive lineman and take one at pick 51 or take one at pick 85, because it is such a deep interior defensive line class. And so when you look specifically at players that are in a contract year, go have John Franklin Myers have the year of his life and figure out whether or not you want to extend him during the season and whatnot. But you still have a player that you took like Devon Walker or, maybe even a Shamar Turner down the line. If you're able to get him where you could be able to really bring him in and be that like perfect John Franklin Myers complement, as the years are progressing and you move on from John Franklin Myers. So it is just perfect. Omar Norman Lott, who has ties to George Payton, who's frankly, I think his nephew. So there are some avenues where they can go where, if they even took one in the first round, they could go out and take one in the 6th round or the 7th round. So like there's ways that they can go and still continue to upgrade even if they pass on it.
There are a couple of other names as well, like Alfred Collins is one, CJ West is another one. So this is a really deep defensive line class. Running back and D-line are some of your biggest needs that you have right now, that and inline tight end. And those are arguably 3 of the deepest positions in this draft class. So it's kind of perfect for the Broncos.
Did you hear what Daniel Jeremiah said about the draft class? Daniel Jeremiah said that these teams should be getting 3 or 4 starters out of this draft alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like first, like right off the bat starters. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. Dane Brugler, I was actually listening to the Athletic show where they were ranking the running backs, And it was like this same thing that I was hearing for the defensive line that Daniel Jeremiah said. He said he had, I want to say it was like 12 graded first round talents out of the interior defensive line or defensive line class. This year, he doubled it. He has 24 interior defensive linemen or defensive linemen who have a first round grade, or in essence, like, are going to be starters down the line. Brugler said like he has like 30 possible starters down the line or impact players that are at running back in this class. And you typically see upwards between like 15 and 20 running backs that are like going to be like impact players. Still pretty high number, but like, you know, for having 30, that's a ridiculous number. Even like 25 to 30 between interior defensive line or defensive line and running back, that's a very high number.
Well, and this is all assuming that Greg Penner doesn't force George Payton to trade up to 5 and go get Ashton Genty.
Hey, this is the beautiful thing about Sean Payton. Everything's on the table.
Just saying.
I will say this, though. If they do trade up and Ashton Genty is still, you know, and he was taken by the Raiders, they're taking Tyler Warren. They're trading up and they're taking Tyler Warren. They're not taking Colston Loveland. They're taking Tyler Warren, which
that seems stupid to me.
It's Sean Payton.
I you mean the Raiders?
No, I'm saying the Raiders would take Genty. We would trade up for Tyler Warren.
Oh, I thought you meant the Raiders would take Tyler Warren. I was like,
no.
Well, that's dumb.
No,
that's like 3 tight ends in the first round in a row.
No, yeah.
Although it's the Raiders.
It is.
It took Alex Leatherwood, so 464 pounds. Yeah, who's that guy out of Florida, isn't he?
Desmond Watson.
Yeah.
Lordy.
Oof.
Now, you probably can't be that big.
Clogger.
But just stand there and don't move.
The toilet clogger, I think, too.
The toilet clogger.
Yep.
Also known as Mike.
Whoa. Whoa.
Shots fired.
Okay, to be fair, I'm not going to say that I don't drop some meatloaf every now and again, but listen. All right, that is all I had. Is there anything else?
That's how we're going to end it. Right.
Meatloaf dropper. That's how we're going to end it.
Yeah, I mean, as far as news and notes, Kliss did drop like the players that they visited with. In terms of top 30 visits or visits, local players don't count against the top 30 visit. And I think they've met with Gunnar Helm and they've met with Terrence Ferguson. They don't count towards top 30 visits. They've met with Caleb Johnson and they have met with Quinshon Judkins, who I think we actually should be talking a little bit more about in terms of Quinshon Judkins, if they don't take Travion Henderson or if they take both. But yeah, obviously Harold Fannin was one, right? Like, because Kliss did mention today that I think the visit was today with Harold Fannin. So there are some interesting names. And I will say, though, like Luther Burden was another one we didn't get a chance to mention. Luther Burden was another one that I think kind of took everybody by surprise because, you know, he doesn't exactly maybe fit what the prototypical wide receiver everybody been saying about Sean Payton is interested in. So, yeah, I just think –
we also, there were a lot of people talking about Tez Johnson in the second, possibly third. But to be fair, the dude's 141 pounds.
That'd be a bit high for Tez.
Tiny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love the like brotherly connection, but that's small.
I also do feel like he's going to be a Bronco. I don't know about you guys, but I have this weird feeling he's going to be a Bronco. Not second round, but I do have this feeling 4th, 5th round, and he's not taken. I have a feeling he's going to be a Bronco. Broncos Twitter's going to be an upset, but I just have this feeling.
It just scares me a little bit that he takes
prospect than Troy Franklin was coming out.
It just scares me a little bit that like he takes one big hit and he's like snapped in half, like he's done.
But you know what? He's like a Mini Cooper. You don't see a lot of those in accidents because they're so small that they don't take those hits, right? So like, when have you ever seen him take a big shot?
Well, when has anybody been able to catch him?
There you go. Thing. Like he can just dip underneath a lot of these big tacklers. It's kind of hard to tackle him because he's so elusive.
Yeah. Then I will say this, it's got nothing to do with me obviously thinking that Tej Johnson has talent, because he has talent. My thing is just, where does he fit in the grand scheme of things with the roster with guys like Marvin Mims and, Troy Franklin. But at the same time, that's why they pay an offensive coordinator or a offensive-minded head coach the big bucks. You play the best players. You'd be able to make it work, and I think he would be able to make it work. And I know for a fact, as we're talking about Ibuka at 20, Bo will thank you long term of having the best possible weapons around you of Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin, Devon Vele, Marvin Mims, growth, possibly becoming a wide receiver too, as the season was winding down last year. Like, he will thank you over the course of his developmental career, for the weapons that he had around him.
And I still am under the belief and the hope that Troy Franklin is going to take a leap in the offseason.
He's got coachable traits that need to be worked on.
I mean, you saw him get better as the season went on, right?
Yeah, not with what we drafted him for, Mike. It looked. I mean, he was doing shorter receptions. That's where he was finally catching the ball. But up until that point, it didn't look like, and the Bills playoff game, it did not look like he and Bo had ever played, together before. The chemistry certainly was not there. But he did make some catches towards the end of the year. But I think he is in real jeopardy of being replaced. And we had the Broncos well represented at the CU Pro Day, and Jimmy Horn Jr. and Will Shepherd late in the draft, and maybe not even that late, because they both balled out. I mean, those could be real possibilities for the Broncos to add one of those as well.
Or even LeJohntay Wester.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I sorry that I left him out.
No, yeah, I think for as much praise as Travis Hunter, had for that wide receiver room, it gets incredibly slept on. And I think that, they even have a couple players there this upcoming year that are going to be really good, like Omarion Miller and Draylon Miller. Like they are two like really good players in that wide receiver room. But Will Shepherd is an interesting one. Like, if you really want to actually like develop a player post Cortland Sutton, Will Shepherd makes a ton of sense. If you even didn't want to develop Vele as that guy, like, he makes so much sense. Horn, if you want to challenge Troy Franklin, if you wanted to challenge Marvin Mims, he would be perfect here. Like, absolutely perfect here.
He's great.
Let me tell you what, seeing Wester in person at the Shrine Bowl, he's got next level speed. Like, he's got a type of speed that you just cannot find very easily. So I definitely would be interested in him just for the pure straight speed.
I know. I can't believe I left him out off the list. So.
All right. And then two things we forgot to mention. Denver did sign Traymon Smith's replacement in what's his stupid name? Sam Franklin. There we go. Sam Franklin. And they got the quarterback of the future and Sam Ehlinger on the team. So no worries, Bo. We got you covered. Sam Ehlinger is on the job.
Woo!
If you're putting your tinfoil hat on, Ehlinger is a bit athletic. So I'm not saying he will be a Taysom Hill, but
yeah, I'm not.
But maybe, they might see some Taysom Hill type packages.
He'll be a good Taysom Hill practice squad member.
He'd be a good scout QB for when they, face like, some of the mobile quarterbacks, like Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels.
And I think that's one of the big reasons why they brought him in, because the Broncos, they're a man coverage team. So by nature, you're going to struggle with mobile quarterbacks. But this upcoming schedule, they've got Jaden Daniels, they've got Jalen Hurts, they've got some mobile quarterbacks on their schedule that they're going to have to deal with.
Oh, one other question that I wanted to ask before we go.
Mike.
We will not have a show next week, so something I want to cover now.
Thank you.
Chris Abrams-Drain or Riley Moss at two. Cornerback 2.
That's not even. It's Riley Moss.
Yeah, that's not even a discussion. It's Riley, and that's somebody coming from somebody who loves Chris Abrams-Drain. I love me some CAD, but there's no conversation. It's Riley Moss.
Yeah, it is 100% Riley Moss. And frankly, I was a bit surprised that there's a conversation on by Twitter by some about like how sour they were about Moss at the end of the year. It's like, do you not know that he was still recovering from his injury? Like, I mean, like he was recovering from his knee injury, and so like he was not necessarily the best. And actually, I do believe the Broncos actually have a much better chance of winning that game, and I actually do think they win that Bengals game if Riley Moss plays when you have Surtain and Moss opposite of that. So I think that, you know, he's a much better corner than people give him credit for. And frankly, the start of that season could not have been at any point any better than anyone could have asked for. So much so that I firmly believe that and I'll be biased. I immediately will be biased. He should have been in the conversation for Defensive Rookie of the Year along with Cooper DeJean. Like, he was just that good, and that
he wasn't a rookie though.
Oh no, you're right. But he wasn't.
Yes, huh?
This isn't the NBA.
I mean, he was basically a rookie, but he wasn't actually a rookie.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I ask is because of the knee injury that Riley Moss got. Not saying that he won't be fully recovered, but we've seen mentally when you get a knee injury, there is some time before you get back into that. If you ever do, take Javonte Williams, for example.
Yeah,
injured his knee. No, not even close to that bad, but injured his knee, never really got back into it. I'm not saying Riley won't, but there could be a conversation for if he comes out and shows the same sort of hesitancy, I guess I'll go with that word, hesitancy that he did when he came back from the injury. Do we see more of a Chris Abrams train?
If it presents itself, I will say the one thing that Riley Moss has, based on how instinctual he plays and whether he's with the Broncos long term, I think will really benefit him because he came from Iowa and Cooper DeJean came from Iowa, they have positional versatility. So later on down the line, as he's getting older, he actually could move to safety and kind of, they're not comparable, but almost be like the Charles Woodson type of route where he goes like, you know, from corner to safety, you know, and he might actually end up being a better safety than he is a corner because of how good he was as a corner. So it's just like that said though, and you look strictly at the corners, it is a good problem to have. I'll just send it at that. It's a good problem to have when you have Chris Abrams drain, you know, playing so well at the end of the year. I will say, not to pour cold water on this, George Payton loves drafting corners. So don't be annoyed or surprised if they take a corner like late day 3 with one of their like 190, you know, selections, or they accumulate another 7th round.
As long as it's not at 20, I might be a little upset if they take a corner at 20.
The only way I will not be upset if it's like Jahdae Barron or Will Johnson. If they actually take Jahdae Barron, we are going to end up having a Jaquan McMillan conversation here soon.
Yeah. I would not be upset with Azariah Thomas like later on, like day 2, day 3 either, because he's a good bump and run corner and Denver plays a lot of bump and run coverage.
Okay. Anything else, or does that do it?
We're good.
Okay. So that's going to do it for us this week. Again, we will not have an episode this next week. We're going to kind of space them out so that we can cover everything and not just jump on here and have a 10-minute show because there's nothing going on. And then the neighborhood will be doing a live stream during the draft. I believe that Gage and Bronco Syndicate is doing one as well.
Yep.
So make sure you check those out. But we're not doing that. I'm not that nuts. We will be doing a show in 2 weeks right before the draft, so make sure you check that out. But we appreciate every single one of you for being in the chat. It's always fun when you guys are here, giving us things to talk about, giving us your opinions. We love it. Make sure you check out all the other shows on the network. We got shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the neighborhood on Sundays or Avs game days or draft days or just whenever I feel like it with whatever sport. We might do a live curling one. Who knows? I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. Also check out
reenacting. Mike will be reenacting curling.
Curling. And make sure you check out Gage Madrid on Broncos Syndicate. That is an amazing show and where I get most of my news from. Cameron Parker hosts mainly Broncos on Wednesday nights. Check that out. Glenn and I, we just do this and then sit around and do nothing the rest of the week. So it's fine. Bronco Bill on Friday. You've got Wild Wild West on Wednesday. You've got an Avs podcast on Thursday. Go to the network, subscribe, like, and just check out the shows and see which one. Check out the shows and see which one you like. There we go. But yeah, we love the Broncos. We love Broncos country. We will see you guys later. We love you guys, and peace out.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast